We left off with the servo picking of the servo frequency and servo centering and all that good stuff. So here we go. We're going to go back to where we were. Power up the unit. And go back online with it. Call on port 4. Okay, we're on the regular brain. And let's double check everything. DSMX. Our satellite is bound. See it right here. It's definitely bound. This tells us our servo positioning. We're still 100. Still 100 here, 100, 100. 45 on the gains. Now then, here we go. Now this one here, the person who originally purchased everything and set it up on a cyclic frequency at 120. That's a standard digital cyclic servo. And they set the tail at 200 hertz and 1520. Well, the tail, the cyclics they chose to purchase are Spectrum H3020s, and the tail's a Futaba 95 20 some. Anyways, 9525, I believe. That's 9525, and after looking it up, it is a 333 hertz at 1520 center pulse on the tail, and the cyclics are in fact 200 hertz and 1520 on the center pulse or whatever. So they were set to go much slower than they could have been. So we're going to bump them on up. Select high-end cyclic. That's 200 hertz. And on the tail, it does. See how it doesn't give you an option? It's 1520, 200 hertz on the tail, or 760 and 333, or 760 and 560 hertz frequency. So, such as this one, we know it's 1520 center pulse, so we're going to select that. Now we're going to take the slider, and you can either move the slider to 333, such as I'm doing now. There's bump past it. There's 333. Let off of it, or you can come over here and click on it, and it'll highlight. And you can do a backspace, type in 333, and hit enter, and it will also. You have to physically make sure the cursor moves, like I just did. See how it was down here, and the HZ wasn't showing, and it was still flashing. When I clicked up here to move the cursor up to this line, it enabled that to be 333 hertz. Until it moves the cursor, it is not saved. So that's one thing to remember about these. I've heard people say they typed something in or whatever, and then when they went back, it went to the old one, and they couldn't figure out why it kept going to the old one and not updating to their new desired setting. But that's why. So just always ensure that if you slid the slider and then went to the next page, it would have accepted it, but since I typed it in, I have to move to another, like what I just showed you, in order to get it to accept. So there's that. Now, as we was talking about before, over here on this page, how it shows this as your servo layout. this is the same thing. You're telling it that this is in fact what your servo layout to swash is, and you have 120 ccpm degree swash. Like some of the JRs are 140. I know that the 700E Raptor, the newest version, it's like 130 or 135 degree swash. It's something unique like that. There's a method that you can go to adjust your ccpm degrees to equal out that 130, 135. But I'm not going to get into that right now. I'm just trying to keep this as basic and straightforward as possible. So this is the one we are. You know, here's your aileron. I mean, your elevator is up here in the front. If this in the anti-rotation bracket and the elevator arm was in the back, then that would be this version, but it is not. It's in the front. So that's with the nose facing away from you and the tail towards you. It's this version here is what the Chase 360 is. Now, this page is extremely critical. Cannot emphasize how critical this is. So okay, this page right here is, I'm going to slide it back a little bit in hopes that we can get the computer and the helicopter in the video, because this one here is like extremely critical that it is done proper. Like, I can't emphasize it enough. This page is where a lot of people get goofed up on and don't realize it, and it can wreak havoc on your self-leveling setup. It can wreak havoc on everything in general, really. What we need to do is this is where you set your sub, basically what used to be sub trim of the servo, like to get the arms 90 degrees at center, your max pitch, your minimum pitch, your max cyclic, and which to ensure that each servo is in fact getting the proper correction direction, if that makes sense. As in, like, a lot of times people will get to this page and they can't figure out why the helicopter is, like, when you tilt it to the right, why is the swash also tilting right instead of left to correct? And they'll go into their radio and they'll reverse channels to get it, and they can get it to work essentially to a manner to where they can fly. But then later on, when it comes time to set up your self level and you're wanting it to work properly, it's gonna do the exact opposite. It's pretty much gonna drive the helicopter right in the ground, and you're gonna be blaming essentially there's a lot of people that blame the brain for this, and it's not true. It's not the brain's fault. Yes, this part is a little confusing at first, so that's why I'm going to take my time, and I'm going to make sure that hopefully I can describe it in a manner that everybody understands, and hopefully we'll have some video to go back on and reference should you have a problem later. So right now these are all zeros. Alright, normally when you first set one up, the pitch is going to be something like 50 or 40 at default, and the cyclic will be 50 or 40 at default as well. Alright, first we want to get these servo arms at center stick, and if you look, when I move my stick, how I'm moving it right now, and it's not really moving, but I'm staying around center. That's because they made the dead band in this page extremely large, so that either you don't have to be dead on 50, like if you go to your pitch curve, how you don't have to be dead at center stick at 50% in and out and given a 50% command in order to achieve 0 pitch. And the same with 100, and the same with 0 for the negative pitch. They did that to simplify your setup. And your Cyclic is also the same way. It's like it's either all or none right now. And that's just to help the user, is the only reason why they've done that. Now, move everything around so I can get. Typically, what you want to do here as well is you want to take the head off first, and you want to make sure your swash is level. I'm gonna have to kind of double check and make sure, but I believe that I know the person who had this before, and they're really knowledgeable on helicopters, so I'm almost 100% positive they got the swash level. The reason being is because the only swash leveling tool that I have is for the 450 size machines is this one, and it's more for like the 450 T-Rex 450s or the mini Protos or the blades. It's not the Chase has a uniquely large main shaft, so I can't use my swash leveling tool, but I know a little trick for figuring it out. But first, what we want to do, we'll go Servo 1, and know for a fact, and if you don't, if you want to make sure, you come back here and look, Servo 1 is this one. So come over here, yeah. Anyways, Servo 1, when you hit this plus button, and it may take 10 or 20 times of hitting it because it's such small movements, but when you hit the plus button, you want to see that this arm is actually moving up. If it is not moving up, you need to hit the servo reverse and touch it again, and then we're going to go through each one and make sure they're all moving in the proper direction. Whenever I'm telling it to go up, it really is going up. I'm telling it to go down, it really is going down. If not, do not reverse channels in the radio to accommodate for this. That is the biggest problem with a lot of the issues we're seeing on the internet, with people posting up frustrated because and I understand it. It's a little confusing in the beginning, especially for a newer person into the hobby, but take your time, slow down. If you have questions after this video, feel free to ask me or any of the other guys. I promise you, we won't. No question's too simple. No question is a dumb question. Just rather take the time and make sure you got it right and make sure you're happy with your helicopter than to have a dissatisfied customer with a unit that is ultimately, in my opinion, one of the best on the market. I think it is the best. But anywho, okay, Servo 1, we're going to hit the button. And it is in fact going up right now. I don't know if you can see it. I'm hoping you can. But see, now also this number right here just turned red. When you get too high, that's saying that you are way outside of your center pulse, and so far that you need to just jump a spline on your servo arm instead of getting it that far out. So now we're going down, and we want to make sure it goes down, and it does. Alright, so that one is in the right direction. I'm going to go back to 0 where it was. So now over here, Servo 2, see, I can move the helicopter in a way where you can see it. Kind of lay the tail across the laptop there. Okay, so now we're on Servo 2. We want to see Servo 2 go up. Yeah. I'm sorry, Servo 2. Now, it's going up. And we're about to go red. Alright. So now we go back down. And we're going down. Just as it should. Now we're back at 0. We're going to stop there. Now servo 3. Make sure servo 3 goes in the right direction. And it in fact goes in the proper direction. The nice thing about this, one of the nice things about the way that Chase or KDS or whatever did this is all 3 servos are laying in the same orientation. So they're either all 3 normal direction or all 3 reversed. It's not always going to be like that. In fact, more times than not, it's going to not be that way. So just keep that in mind. If I had to reverse it, like say we're going to do one going up on servo 1. See, servo 1's going up, and I'm noticing it's going down. So say I notice it's going down, I just hit this reverse, and see negative 22, or 22 just turned to negative 22. Now, when I hit the up button, it's going down. Okay, so I need to reverse it again. Make sure it goes back up. Go back to 0. Now that I push this reverse button, I also need to go back and double check my other servos. And now they are in fact, number 2 is now going backwards. When it should be going up, it's going down, and when it should be going down, it's going up. So I need to touch the reverse button again. And try. Okay, so now number 2 is going up and down like it should. 1 is still going backwards again. So I need to push it again. Now try it again. Watch 1. Okay, 1's going up and down, right? 2, it's going up when it should. Now down when it should. Now 3. Oh, now 3's backwards. Crap. Push it again. Now let's try it. Now 3 is going up when it should. Put it back on 0. 2 is now going down. Push it again. I have to do some editing there. Okay, so anyways, it's not like if you're working on this, say you're working on servo 1 and you push the reverse button, it doesn't reverse servo 1 only. It reverses to another possible direction for the swash. So it may take 3 or 4 times of hitting the servo reverse button before you get it to where all 3 are moving properly. It's very important that don't give up. You keep pushing and double check, push, double check until you get all 3 of them moving in the proper direction. Otherwise, if this is not done correctly, your auto level will definitely not work as intended or planned or designed, what have you. And more than likely, you're going to have a lot of grief come the end of all this whenever you're trying to get your correction directions verified. And it's just this step. I cannot emphasize how critical making this part proper, make sure it's done correctly, is. This is a very critical step. The whole thing with the pitch, the cyclic, servo travel. So I'm gonna go ahead and finish getting this one back to where it's correct. Now I showed you about how the servo reverse works. So we'll go back to servo 1, and it's going backwards. So push it again. Alright, now it's right. Servo 2 is going in the right direction. Servo 3. There. So it took me literally 5 or 6 times of pushing servo reverse before they all 3 were in the right configuration to go up and down collectively together. So now when it's moving correct. Now, since I don't have a swash leveling tool, and the only reason that I'm going about it like I'm about to is because I have all the confidence in the world in the person who set this helicopter up. If it was just somebody that I didn't know or what have you, I don't know that I would trust what I'm about to do. So please do not take this part as it's going to work every time. But say your swash is level and you're trying to set 0 pitch at center stick. I'm going to have to kind of move stuff back a little bit. This is a trick I was taught. I got my stick at center, or within the dead band of being center. I have my RC Logger digital pitch gauge. Name dropping. Alright, now I'm going to make sure that the helicopter is sitting level, not rocking anywhere. I'm going to fold my blades back, and right now, as you can see by right here, they're off just ever so slight, and that being because this arm is holding the weight up. So all this weight down here, that's multiplied tremendously, and this one here is pulling all the weight down. So being off just that little bit is more than likely okay. You got to kind of take into consideration that much, what I'm trying to describe there for that leverage or whatever that's way out here. But I mean, it can't be like that. It's obvious then that you got something wrong and your pitch is off, plus or minus. So right there, being that they're equal, that's pretty much 0 pitch. Now if we rotate this around and we watch right here on the tips, if they start to rocking and changing, then you should probably look and say that this one here was to have went up some right here. Well, this arm is directly above this servo, so that tells me that either A, the servo needs to be shortened or extended, whichever it did, or B, this the blade linkage itself needs to be adjusted to accommodate it properly. But if you have the pitch gauge, and if you have the swash leveling tool, and you do your swash level first, you know 99% of the time it will be the blade linkage itself is out a little bit. So anyways, we're going to rotate it on around and make sure that throughout this whole rotation that it stays pretty much the same, and it does. Which, like I said, I know the person who set it up, and he's very knowledgeable, and actually the guy taught me a lot of what I know. So we know there now that since they stayed level together throughout that entire rotation, that both blades are pretty much 0 pitch at center stick. Now I'm going to turn this helicopter nose in to me some. Like that. Move these out of the way. And I'm going to have to back the camera up some. Okay. Now, I'm going to put this on. And we know that the main shaft is 90 degrees and everything's 90. And from our little test we just did, we know that we're pretty much at center at 0 pitch right now. So I can turn this on. No matter how unlevel my table is, if I don't move the helicopter, I can zero out my gauge. And we know now that is all, if we're in line with everything, that is 0 pitch at center stick. You know, we're 0.1 right now, minus 0.1. Let me see if I can get it better. I doubt I can, but I just goofed it. There we go. There's 0. Awesome. So I want to aim for about 12 degrees collective pitch. 12 to 12.5, plus or minus. Right now we're at 13.5. Alright. I fly what I think to be okay 3D. I know Burt Kammer, and I'm definitely no Nick Maxwell or Simon Bosnian or Duncan Bosnian, but I mean, I think I do pretty good, and I personally, I like mine to be around 12, 12.5. After flying it, I may bump it up a little bit, just depending on how the heli feels. But ultimately, most all of mine are around 12.5 on the pitch, positive and negative. So now we're at like negative 12.3 on the bottom end, 0 or 0.2 negative, so that's probably 0. And there's 12.3, 12.4 on the top. I'm gonna leave it right there. That's probably pretty good. You know, whenever you go back, it might vary a tenth or two. That's because of, you know, you gotta imagine when everything's spinning and all that centrifugal force is in effect, every little bit of that play and slop is no longer there, and it will also identify any weak points in a hurry, should there be an oops anywhere in your build. But hopefully none of that occurred. Now I'm gonna go back to center stick now that I got my positive at 12.5, 12.6. Center's at 0. Bottom is again about, you know, 12.3, somewhere in there. Now then back at 0. I want to set my cyclic. Now my cyclic is a little different. Like the beast decks, you got to set the blue light and 6 degrees for your cyclic ring. I'm not 100% sure on the V-bar. I think it's 8 degrees if I remember right. Well, on the brain, the max, you kind of have more of a window here, and the max that you want to set this to is 10 degrees on your cyclic. I mean, you can go beyond that, but you're more than likely going to see negative effects because of it, such as a cyclic bobble or something of that nature. You know, it's not going to be as dialed in as you might want it to be. So we're going to aim for 10 degrees. Let's see if I can get all this closer. So now that I got it back at center stick, 0 pitch. My cyclic right now is at 14 degrees, which is way too much. So, and it says 50%. So I'm gonna start backing this off, and I'm gonna stop around, I don't know, 9.8, 9.7. The reason being is more than likely it's going to vary a little bit from one side to the other. It says now we're at 9.2, so I went too far. There we go. 9.9 to 10. So it says 10.2. One side says 9.9. I'm gonna take it. It says we're at 36%, so I'm gonna go to 35 just to be safe. And you got. There we go. We're about 9.6 to 9.8 on our cyclic deflection, and now we can also turn the blades 90 degrees and double check our elevator deflection and make sure that it's about proper light. And it pretty much is. we're at 9.8 and 9.9. 9.8, 9.9 is bouncing back and forth between 9.8 and 9.9. So we're gonna call that good. Now we have 12 and a half or so degrees collective. It says 13 right now, but keep in mind I just moved the helicopter and I'm not on a perfectly level workbench. But originally when we set it, I zeroed it with everything in one spot, and it was 0, 12.5, and negative 12.5. So now I'm seeing, with it being off to 12.9, now it's saying 12.1, which is 0.4 off. Kind of makes sense. That actually makes a lot of sense. So I'm just in a different spot on the table that has not been leveled. Alright, so we know that's good. Go back to center. I'm going to move on to the tail now. And I'm going to take this off. Now, turn the helicopter back around. Sorry about that. Set it back down here. And I'm going to put it in line with the camera so that hopefully everything will be seen and can make sense. Okay. Now, move the camera back in some. Okay. At can that hopefully this will be interpreted properly. Now what I want to do is, this is where I set my proper travel direction of the tail as well as my endpoints. I've already set my radio, calibrated it to the brain, so we know that the tail's all good as far as that goes, but we need to make sure it moves right. So if I go and I give it, say, a nose right command, I need to make sure that whenever, if it was to be rotating, that it would be blowing air that way, or it would be blowing air in that direction, forcing the tail to come this way to the left. And right now it would do that, very much so. So our directions are actually right. If it was to have been backwards, we would have pushed the servo reverse button right here, and it would have changed the direction that it moved whenever I gave it a nose right, nose left command by my radio. So we don't need to do that because it's already right. Now what we do need to do though is go and set our endpoints. We give it a nose right command, and we still have space here for the slider. So I'm going to keep giving it, adding some throw until we achieve a slight bind, and then I'm going to back it off. And there it is. And you heard it when it stopped binding. That's when I stopped reducing the throw. So check it one more time. Go to all full right. One click, 1 to 2 clicks, it should bind. There's the bind. Now 1, 2, there's it stop. So that's good that direction. Now we're going to go back to the left. Same thing. It's pretty close to binding, so probably won't take but 1 or 2 clicks. And there it is. So back it off, and there it stopped. So that's good. That's our max deflection both ways. The pitch pre-compensation, that's something I leave turned off. I might use that if I was having a bunch of trouble getting a tail dialed in. Say it was kicking out and there's nothing I could seem to do to fix it. Then I might try a little pitch pre-comp or cyclic pre-comp. But in the beginning, I leave it off. Try it with it try flying it with it set off to turned off, and with everything in the defaults is the best practice I've found and what most people seem to have the most success with. The rotation, you can go ahead and set that, but until you get to a point where you're using the pre-comps on the tail, you won't need it. It doesn't care basically whether it's right or wrong until you get to using the tail pre-comps. But I already know it's flying clockwise or rotating clockwise, so that's selected. Counterclockwise or unknown is the other options. Yeah, like right now I could leave it unknown and it will be fine. If I had a DX6 or something of that nature and I wanted to free up the 6th channel for bank switching or something, I could get rid of the tail gain running through the aux output in my radio, and I could set it in the software. But the only negative thing to that is if I click that button and I set my value here and I go fly and I decide that my gain is too low or too high or what have you, now instead of just raising my endpoint in the radio a little bit and then flying again, now I have to come back in and hook it up to the laptop and go in here and type in a new value and then go try. So I mean, where it's tremendously helpful for those with the 6-channel radio, if you have a 7 or an 8 or 9 and beyond, it doesn't make much sense to use it. So I mean, it's just up to personal preference then. So use it at your own, whatever you feel is best. So I choose to leave it off, personally. So now we know that's right. And we'll go here next to the next step, and this is where you tell it which direction you're mounted your brain. And mine, I have it with the top is up with the sticker that says brain. The wires, meaning the servo wires, are pointed out front. So that's why this one's selected. And if I spun it around to where the wires were facing towards the tail, I would pick this one. Like I also have a 450L. As a matter of fact, I'll go get it right now and I'll use it as an example.